The ninth presenter is Miss Yui Hiramatsu. The presentation title is Stand Up, Cheer for Change, Rethinking Gender Bias Through Cheerleading as a Case Study. Please start.
Imagine a boy who has dreamed of joining his school's cheerleading club. Week after week, he watched his role models perform, quietly building up his courage. Finally, on sign-up day, he walks up to a table and is told, "No, you can't join because you are a boy." This is not a fiction. This happened to someone I actually know. In our modern society, when we talk about gender bias, most of us usually think about women. Women in politics, leadership, and sports. The inequalities women face are real and deserve attention. But today, I want to ask a different question. Did you know that some men are also denied the chance to do what they love, simply because they are male? Today, I'm here to talk about how words and assumptions in our society can quietly exclude people because of gender. From the age of 10 to 13, I live in Hong Kong and did cheerleading in an international environment. Men and women cheered together, and no one found it strange. However, when I came back to Japan, everything changed. I noticed it immediately. There were not many male cheerleaders. At first, I thought it was just a coincidence. But the more I looked around at other teams, other schools, I found out it was not just a coincidence. Last year, NHK reported that a male high school student in Japan was not allowed to join a cheerleading club, not because of safety or skill, but simply because he was male. What I observed was not just my personal impression. It was real. According to the Japan Cheerleading Association, less than 1% of cheerleaders are male. The numbers reveal a stark imbalance, but behind them are real people with real experiences. One male cheerleading friend told me he almost quit because of hurtful comments. And someone even told me, "Men shouldn't do cheerleading." Why is it wrong for men to cheer? From my experience, male cheerleaders are essential, not only for their physical strength, but also for creating well-balanced, successful teams. Why should loving a sport be restricted by gender? To understand this, I spoke with a professor, Maki Ito from Hosei University, specializing in sports sociology. She introduced me to the concept of unconscious bias, and invisible assumptions we hold without realizing it. In sports, it often means we expect men to do powerful, rough sports, and we see great sports like cheerleading or dance labeled as less male. This experience made me reflect on Japanese values of harmony or wa, which is a beautiful part of our identity. To preserve this, many Japanese choose to do what is right in the eyes of society, rather than what they truly want. But this sense of harmony can sometimes discourage individuality. During my study abroad in Canada to observe co-ed cheerleading, I discovered a completely different reality. When I surveyed the public about co-ed cheerleading, only 2% found it strange. The difference is that Canada doesn't just rely on good intentions, but protects equality through clear institutional frameworks. Many Canadian organizations have a DEI policy for every kind of sports. These policies make no athletes can be excluded because of gender. So what about Japan? Japan is moving forward too. The Japanese government has been promoting its 6 basic plan, and some local federations have begun reviewing its old rules that historically excluded boys from girls' sports or girls from boys' sports. This is a good start, but policies alone doesn't change captains' assumptions or parents' discomfort. Policies create framework, and people create cultures inside it. So what does the future beyond this world look like? I envision a world where no one is discouraged from doing what they love simply because of their gender. To work toward this, I've already taken actions in school and in the community, and I want to develop the work further. These issues goes beyond one person, but as individuals, we can take actions to make people in our community feel safe and heard. The professor I interviewed gave me 3 simple steps: discover, understand, and include. I would love to translate these into simple actions we can take from today. Step 1, discover. Be aware and pay attention to others. Recognize when someone is treated unfairly or barred from doing. Step 2, understand. Start an open conversation. Don't just nod along and listen to people who are told, no, you can't, for reasons they have nothing to do with their ability. When my male cheerleading friend told me about the comments he received, I just didn't feel sorry. I asked him to tell him more, and that's how I learned what silence really costs. Step 3, include. Encourage others to try and support them in their endeavors. My ultimate dream is to contribute making co-ed cheerleading an official Olympic sport. When millions of people watch male and female athletes competing together on the world's biggest stage, I hope that bias will start to disappear. But now I want you to reflect. When you see a boy in cheerleading or a girl in politics or leadership like me, what is your first thought? Each person deserves to be judged by their passion, effort, and ability. I would love to end this presentation with the simple words that changed how I see this issue. Differences are not deficit. Differences are protected by policies we build and by the people who choose to be. I'll be happy if today's presentation helped you change the way you think about gender. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ms. Hiramatsu. We move on to a Q&A session. The mic will go to Ms. Young.
Hello, thank you so much. That was such a powerful, powerful speech. I studied ballet very seriously when I was a child, from the age of 6 until 16, and very similar issues to cheerleading. I saw a lot of my male friends who did ballet feel like they were getting made fun of at school. So I wanted to ask you, besides Canada, what are some other countries that you came across in your research where you think Japan can learn from? Maybe not just policy, but other organizations or other initiatives that you think would be something that Japan can learn from?
Thank you for your question. I'm actually working on gender bias, both in my school and in the community. As I'm a sub-leader on my school cheerleading club, I invited a male coach to my high school cheerleading club, even though only female coaches had taught us before. At first, my teammates were very hesitant because it was our new coaching style. But as the practice went on, everyone was truly appreciated because his new coaching style really helped us improve our skill. If I simply followed the old days, I wouldn't have been able to show my teammates how to be open and tolerant to others, and not just judged by their gender, but skills. And outside of school, I'm actually involved in a community called Pride House Tokyo, where LGBTQ+ fans, athletes, and allies gather to watch matches and connect. I sometimes go there to learn policies from other countries and join discussions to make sports more inclusive. And someday I really want to organize co-ed cheerleading events for children. Instead of just talking about the equality, I think it's important for children to experience it through training and performances from young age. If children learn how to be open and tolerant to others from young age, I think this mindset can be handed down through generations. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Hiramatsu.